Welcome to our roundtable discussion, Engagement Wasteland, where leads go to die. This is going to be a roundtable discussion all around your demand generation efforts and the team of Demand Gen and how they partner with marketing operations and your MOPS folks. Who do we have on the call today? So let me introduce our panelists. Myself, I'm Rusty Hall. I'm an account executive and a consultant here with Atumos. So I'll be coming at it from the consultant, from the MOPS practitioner point of view. We have Jay Barron, founder of Elevate Demand, a longtime colleague of mine. And we also have today Jeff Q, Director of Global Marketing Operations at Magnitude Software. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you, Rusty. I'm excited to be here. It's going to be fun.
I can't wait. One of the reasons that we put this panel together is there's three different opinions from different sides. So we've got several points of view as you look at your MOP structure, how your demand generation efforts are structured, and how that relates to your marketing automation and your internal marketing team. So the way this is going to play out is we're going to go and we're going to look at some high-level topics for discussion. So here's an outline of what we'll be talking about today. Each one of these topics will be discussed in depth by myself and Jay and Jeff. And then feel free to, any questions that you have that come up around this topic, we'll go further in depth on that. So things we're going to be looking at today. Here's a kind of outlined list. I'm actually not going to run through the bullet point because that's just slideware that we don't really need, because we're going to be talking in depth on this stuff. So that being said, let's go ahead and get right to it if you gentlemen are ready.
Let's do it.
All right. Starting off, I think this is one of the key points that, being in marketing and marketing automation, demand gen for a long time, one of the things that I've seen is your successful results come from successful partnerships. So number one, how have you seen successful partnerships between demand gen, that demand generation team, and your marketing operations team? So both of those teams working in tandem, is there alignment? And if so, what does that look like from your past experience, and which has been the most successful? So, Jay, I'll let you kind of lead off on this one, man.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think back to, when me and you worked together, right? Which is, we were at the hip. Like, we were talking about every campaign would be running, what we need to do. We'd be talking about the issues we're running into, right? So I think that's number one when you think about a successful partnership between demand gen and ops, is like, we have to be working together. I think where it kind of falls apart, and kind of what we talked about before, not falls apart, but I think what's happening and when the relationship becomes unsuccessful is when marketing ops starts to become more of a support function to demand gen. And what I mean by that is, I come to the mark ops person and I just be like, hey, we're doing this email campaign. Here's the emails, go create the cadence. I need a landing page. And you become more of a support function and less of that partner. And I think that's where things run into issues, right? And I think the other thing is, when I think about how I work with ops now, is, really trying to understand what I'm trying to get at. So a lot of times it's the demand gen goes to the marketing ops person, hey, I want to run this report, instead of trying to understand what we're trying to get at with the data in demand gen. And having that type of relationship and helping me go a layer deeper is really critical, I think.
Yeah, and just to, harken back to our days of working together was, alignment between, okay, Jay would come to me and say something like, well, I've got this idea for a great banner ad, or I've got this, I'm going to increase spend over here in this channel. What's going to be the best offer that we can, push them into, and how does my initiative then carry on into the marketing ops side?
Yep.
Rather than just like, hey, we got a new lead in and it just goes into the general bucket, then what do you do with it, right? So
right. Yeah, we used to dig really deep, right? We would go back and look. We're doing all these white papers. The only reason people are reading them is we put a bunch of paid dollars behind them. Nobody actually wants to read these white papers.
For sure. Jeff, what's your take on the relationship between your demand generation team's efforts and your marketing ops folks' efforts?
Well, I have a preferred way of working, and but I've seen both ways. I've seen it go badly, and I've seen it go really well. And by badly, what I mean is where there's no alignment, where one marketing ops acts like they're just there to fulfill a request, fill a menu order kind of thing, and does not get involved in the strategy, doesn't talk about the required outcomes, because a lot of times the required the marketers, they have experience in generating demand. They know how to write an email. They know how to write a subject line that's going to convert, that'll, get someone to open an email, or a CTA that'll convert. But sometimes they don't understand, or they're not aware of what's possible within the technology. But also, they may not be aware of what happens upstream, which is above us. Who needs to see the results of this data, right? So there's a few layers, right? Like you have, for example, depending on the company, you may have private equity that owns your company. Or you may have company may be privately owned, or you may be a public company like Adobe. There are many levels of reporting, right? In dashboarding and drill down. So at the highest level, at the board level, they want to see the revenue coming in. They want to see projections. Then you start to go down a level, and you get to the general managers of business units and so forth. And then you take it down, and they want to see sort of results on budget spends, perhaps by campaign. But then when you get down to the next level, where as marketers you want to start to see sort of granular values, and if you just in marketing ops just fulfill a request of, okay, let's just create an email and send it out, and you don't ask enough questions at the beginning of who needs to see this, what are the metrics you're trying to report on, but also thinking about how that data moves through the system too. I've seen cases where data leads will come into a general bucket, and there's no UTM values tracking these leads, so you actually have no idea of who came in through paid. I've seen leads coming in through multiple products, but into the same Marketo program, so you actually have no acquisition program identifying that first touch lead source. I've seen poorly named programs in Marketo that don't sync up with matching campaigns inside Salesforce. I've seen.
Is that a demand gen problem though, or a markups problem?
It is
a partnership.
It's a conversation problem. I think it's where expectations aren't set. Or sometimes it's a personality problem. I think it's if everybody can agree on what is our goal. If you think about it, what are we all really trying to do? We're all trying to drive revenue. I've worked in places where the only KPI was filling the top of the funnel, because that's what the campaign was measured on, and it was considered a success because you got 8,000 trial downloads. But in the end, there was actually no sales.
So I feel like Jeff and Jay, we've been exposed to this, but the alignment between kind of the KPIs on what demand generation is trying to do, and also what marketing automation is trying to do, there should be at least some crossover, if not some direct alignment with that. Otherwise, you're working towards two different goals. So,
yeah, no, I mean there absolutely needs to be alignment to the KPIs and the end result. I think like this is where demand gen and ops is getting, I think, stuck right now. Like what Jeff described a little bit is like the perfect scenario, which is we want to align to a revenue. I think 99% of marketing teams just as a whole aren't even close to that, right? They're not following it to the end results. Like the KPIs of they'll do cost per click. They look at, their sessions. They look at how many leads they got. They look at like their cost per lead. They might follow that to like how many opportunities, but they don't typically go much further than that. Because to Jeff's point, when you go that far, it actually, and this is a negative against me, it exposes demand gen, all the areas you're not driving revenue because you're focused on a cost per lead number, right? When you focus on that, don't follow it all the way, like that's the issue. So like the KPIs, what I work with marketing ops, so I have a dashboard for demand gen. Like what I look at is inbounds, how much marketing pipeline we've actually driven. I look at the conversion points of that. So was that a demo? Was that a free trial? Was that a contact us? all the way down through pipeline closed won. So I follow everything all the way through to actually closed won. And I actually, on my dashboard, I don't look at cost per lead at all. That's like the least concern with my KPIs actually.
So that's interesting, but and I'd like to say too, like some of that is organizational, right? Like aligning on KPIs. So Jay gets to kind of define his KPIs there. But Jeff, you've had kind of the situation in the past where you've been able to kind of be in charge of both sets, both demand generation and marketing ops. So I'm sure that clears the way. But what are the things in an organizational structure that might cause friction on getting alignment between demand generation and your marketing automation teams?
I can actually see I've seen challenges where VP sales and CMOs are in complete disagreement about what an MQL is. I think that's a big one. Right. And of course, that's when you're very lead focused, and that lead perhaps leads to KPIs being set based around, how big your top of funnel is, as opposed to measuring accounts, the number of accounts that you have. And yes, you need people and leads inside accounts, but ultimately, if you focus around the type of accounts that are best suited for your business and ignore the rest. Right. But if your VP sales has a different view of what should be inside Salesforce compared to what your CMO views, you can create some problem. You can have some problems. In one specific case, you may have, like if you want full touch, if you want to have proper multi-touch attribution showing, you need to have one-to-one leads in Marketo and in Salesforce. Right. But then you may end up with a VP sales who says, well, no, these are all just touches when they were talking about leads. And we don't want to see these leads inside Salesforce unless they're MQL'd or the equivalent have met the equivalence or requirements to be an MQL.
Right. Which brings up a great point. We'll be discussing that later. What does sales readiness actually look like and how do we measure it? So,
yeah.
All right. Well, I feel like that's kind of covered, how you should partner with your demand generation team and align it with marketing operations. Hopefully we'll have some questions at the end of the session on that. And we'll definitely be giving out some kind of tips on how to build that relationship and make that a little stronger. But for now, moving on to topic 2. How should the two teams align and what determines sales readiness? Just what we were talking about, right? So you've got leads coming in. You're trying to build engagement through the marketing operations side, through your nurture engagement programs. After they've come in from your demand gen CTA, they go into, hopefully you've got a design nurture for that stream. But now that we've got them, how do we kind of determine sales readiness? And this is one of those things where there's a billion ways to do it, right? Like we started with, lead scoring, but there's also intent signals. There's, where they came in from. Was that a contact us form? Obviously, but, does the sales team want every webinar registrant? So what are the kinds of things that you guys are seeing right now as far as, is this person actually ready for a sales conversation, and what should we do to get them to that state?
Sure. I guess I'll kick this off. I know you guys know my opinions on this, right? So I have taken a huge shift over the last few years on this, right? And I was very old school in terms of what determines sales readiness, which was an MQL. If a lead MQL'd at one point, it was considered sales ready, and you would hand it off to sales. You would adjust the scoring model up or down to try to dictate when leads would be MQL. But what I found in every account I've audited is MQLs turn to revenue at less than 1%. So while we're sitting here celebrating doing 200 MQLs a month, we literally just celebrated 198 MQLs that didn't turn to revenue. And that's some of the reality right now. So to me, sales readiness is only when a lead requests sales interaction. And it's how do you build demand gen and marketing ops to actually get people to request sales interaction. That is the only true bearer of what sales readiness is. Beyond that, there is no sales readiness. You talked about intent signals to me. If you've waited for intent signals, you've waited too long. Like that's the bottom line. And number 2, I don't think they're intent signals as much as somebody's just doing research, and research doesn't mean intent. And I think that's where we have confused the two, which is we take people doing research at meaning that there's intent to buy, when typically that's not the case. I do research all the time with zero intent to buy. So that's like really the shift when you think about this. What is sales readiness? At least from me and being in demand gen, and I think even probably marketing ops would agree that there really is only one gauge for sales readiness, and that's actually requesting sales interaction. Anything beyond that is not a sales ready lead.
So Jeff and I have a little bit different take on that, coming from the MOP side of that, right? The goal here, right, is to figure out how to get somebody educated or get them engaged enough to make that interaction with sales. So that's when we do, the determining where they're at in the buying stage, and then trying to give them the right piece of content through marketing automation that's going to get them ready to reach out to sales and make that first contact. So I don't feel like it's completely the opposite of, what we do, but I feel like there should definitely be some more thought given to, it's not just about the score that we're giving them, right? That's an arbitrary number that could mean anything. And typically is not all that aligned with, what sales is looking for in a lead anyway, unless you've got great sales and marketing alignment. But it should be more about getting them to take that interaction, as you're saying, Jay, to like reach out on their own and request that sales interaction. That's the kind of determination in your mind.
Yeah, because ultimately you start building misalignment too. So a few things happen. Is number one, eventually what happens is sales doesn't want your leads anymore, right? Like if you're not handing them truly sales ready leads, I do it. The mouse people do it. You look in and you're seeing, here's what we consider a sales ready lead with 3 touches over 60 days. Well, they only called it 3 times because what you're handing over to them isn't very, and this is on me, like this isn't on sales, right? Like this is on us to fix it. So, I think that's the number one thing is you're creating huge amounts of misalignment when you're not passing over leads that are truly sales ready, between your, not just like the marketing ops, but like your sales team eventually just doesn't want your leads anymore.
Jeff,
I have lots of thoughts. I have lots of thoughts on this.
I knew Jeff would.
So Jay and I, we tend to agree on a lot of things, but I always have a but or an if or well, what if? And, and Jay's brought up a lot of things. I do want to go back to that issue around intent data, because from an ops point of view, I think there's a lot of value in intent data that is not just research, but it depends on, it all depends on, is the person already an opportunity? Let me stick with the sales readiness. We'll come back to the intent discussion after. So, one of the things that I found that determines sales readiness, there's marketing's view of sales readiness and there's sales view of sales readiness. We think it's based on somebody showing some level of activity, and generally that is, for us, it's they actually said we want to talk to someone. Filled out a contact form, did a trial request, did a demo request, attended a live webinar. I think that's something that's really undervalued right now. We have a number of participants in here. The number doesn't match the number of registrations. We're all used to this now. A lot of people, I myself will do it all the time. I'll sign up just to get the recording, and then I can fast forward through recording to the good bits, skip the housekeeping rules at the beginning and so forth, right? These are things these are indicators that the person wants to talk to somebody, showing up at a live event, wanting to be asked, be involved in the Q&A, requesting a conversation. But then there's the sales. What do they think sales readiness is? And this is all based around how many salespeople do you have working? Because the more salespeople you have on your sales team, the sooner they think sales readiness is. So if there's not a lot of salespeople, they're all kept busy because they're dealing with all the contact us, the demo requests, and so forth. They're busy. They don't have time to deal with people who aren't showing intent or interest. If your sales team is too heavy, then what'll happen is you're going to have salespeople reaching out to marketing ops saying, we just sent out an email. Can you send me a report of all the people who just clicked on the call to action? Right? Clicked on the call to action, not actually spent time on the page, but just clicked the call to action. They clicked on a call to action to go see something, but we actually haven't, they don't care if they actually visited the page or not, or if they went to that page and that page, right? So scoring can be helpful in that case where you can say, okay, well, the clicking on the call to action might be a mid-value, but then if they visit a couple pages, including that target page, that has a certain score. I mean, you could do it as a scoring, or you could do it as the activity itself. If they visited this page, right, and clicked on this CTA.
I'm ready to stop you right there, Jeff.
Okay.
I think that's actually the biggest issue. So a few things. I've never downloaded an ebook waiting for sales to reach out to me. I've never attended a webinar hoping the sellers can reach out to me. There's no such thing as a warm ebook download. It doesn't exist. I think that's number one. But then you spoke to a bigger issue when marketing, demand gen, we've let this happen. And this is on us, right? Is we're creating a huge imbalance in our revenue engine. When you look at most organizations, when you look at, I mean, it depends on the size, right? But when you look at sales to marketing budget, sales outspends marketing like 8 to 10 in some scenarios. And that's the problem. We've created this massive imbalance in the market engine by passing over leads. It's not turning to revenue. So now sales teams are saying, well, we need more bodies because we have to make up for the lack of revenue. So now their budget is 6, 8, 10 times. And a lot of that's in headcount, right? But it's still, it's a huge imbalance. So instead of now having a marketing team that's creating demand, we now have a marketing team that's basically a sales support function that's bringing leads to feed a sales team to close deals that are almost to the point of outbounding, right? Like they're closing at 1%. I mean, I've never seen a high percentage win rate on webinars or ebooks or even scored leads. Like I've looked at scored leads and I've just never, to me, the only thing that is sales ready is requesting the sales interaction. And that change then determines from demand gen, even marketing ops, how do we create content? How do we create emails that get people to request sales interaction? We can do scoring, but scoring should be in marketing only, maybe determine when you potentially send some of those later messages, but it shouldn't be as a basis to ever determine sales readiness. And I'll leave it there.
Well, I gotta go back too, but I've got to support Jeff on this. So my thought is, what Jeff was speaking to was the scoring on vanity metrics, things like opens and clicks throughs, right? Like people consider that excess. Like give me a list of everybody that opened this email and pass it over to the sales team, when what we should be doing is like going further down and actually adding that into the success step in Marketo, right? If you're your marketing automation platform. I'm wearing my Marketo shirt today, so I'm talking Marketo. But instead of scoring on those kind of vanity metrics, score it on like, did it actually perform what we were hoping this campaign would do, and score on those success steps within each one of your channels. So it shouldn't just be, oh, they open an email, that's a success. So they, score up on both points, right? They're going to get scored up for opening and clicking an email, and then also for being a success in that channel, when we should really be focused on what was the intent of that program. And that's where we should be driving score and finding sales readiness. Now, what I do find is oftentimes a scoring model gets implemented, and then sales is, oh, great, we're going to have these qualified leads coming over. And then this is what happens like over time, right? It's just like it gets further and further away, and there's no feedback loop either. So, all you hear is, well, we're getting crappy leads. Well, it's because, we're working on the model that you gave us a year ago before business requirements changed. So.
Or maybe it's just position it. They're not sales ready. Like if sales wants to work leads in the database, that's fine. If they want to use scoring as a way to find people they should outbound to, that's fine. But to me, it's still outbounding. It's not. And that's where marketing gets in trouble, because eventually, I mean, there's marketing teams that got crushed because of COVID. And why did that happen? They weren't aligned to revenue. They were aligned to CPL metrics and things like that. They didn't follow it all the way to revenue. So, and maybe that's how you position it. It's not, look, these leads aren't sales ready. You're more than welcome to call them. If I was going to outbound, I would start with these leads in the system based on the score, but they have not requested sales interaction.
Right. Jeff, thoughts on that?
Well, so going back to the success metrics, we actually do within marketing ops, we set up our successes, within the channels. It's not opens and clicks. It's actually, it's based around whether or not they downloaded a high value item, a mid value item, a low value item. Depending on, did they click on a social icon inside an email, or did they click on the primary CTA? Somebody clicking on privacy policy is not a high value click. Clicking on the CTA, the primary CTA, is generally what we would call a mid value, which kind of gets them just under halfway to being an MQL. So they actually have to go and download or click on a couple CTAs in a couple emails and visit some web pages to show some level of activity, right? If it were fully up to me, we would only be sending alerts on leads that asked to be communicated with, right? However, in some cases, sometimes, and I will agree with sales on this, that sometimes people do need a push. Sometimes they do, even myself, I'm guilty of, being interested in a product, but until the salesperson actually reaches out to me because I've done some activity, do I then have a conversation and have ended up buying? So I don't think there's a perfect solution. I think identifying intent and activity and being able to track all that behavior is really important. I'd say implementing a solution like some Visible as an example, which allows you to track all your touch points, right? Across your different platforms, I think gives a really good picture of a lead's activity, of an account's activity, like the leads in that account.
Got it.
Skip us back a slide here, gentlemen. I got, there we go. So, pardon my slideware, but no, I think it's hard to determine, right? Especially when you don't have an open line of communication with sales and you're aligning, what is sales readiness. But I think, to Jay's point, that's the ultimate.
It's not hard to determine. Just when they request sales interaction.
It's the ultimate buying signal, right?
One thing I'm hearing with Jay is it sounds like it's on and off, and ideally we start with an on and off, black or white, 1 or 0, yes or no. As I like to say, it's all a lot of Boolean. Right?
I think it's more of getting better behavior from your demand gen team. Actually, this isn't necessarily better behavior from marketing ops or even sales. It's aligning your marketing team around better behavior away from, because here's what's going to happen in the next 5 years, right? Is buying behavior is changing to a point where it's going to be anonymous. There isn't going to be as many nurtures. There's always going to be email marketing. I know that, but people are filling out a form later in the process. And in demand gen, we have to get better and better at facilitating that. Because what's going to happen, I'll give you an example. As we talk about this at Armor, we ungated everything. So everything is available, free to consume. Inbounds, sales requests are up 80% right now, right? So that's the power when you rethink your demand gen from I need leads to I want more buyers to pass over to sales. That's where you start to see some of that power. When it's to change the behavior in our marketing team to think about how can we get leads sales ready instead of how can we get more leads to score up to move over to a threshold to pass on to sales. Because the rest of we gamed some of that scoring model systems. And it's not that it's bad or evil. We have a quota. We're trying to hit it. The scoring model is the scoring model. If I can hit it, I'm going to hit it.
And I think that comes from the top down, right? It's it's that volume versus quality of conversion, right? So you would get the edict of, well, we've got to hit this number of MQL volumes. So you're putting out CTAs that are intentionally just to get people to click on there so they can get to the next stage and get accepted by sales, rather than trying to focus down on what's really going to become a revenue generating lead. It's just about feeding the volume at that point, which to Jeff's point, creates a bigger sales team with needless work, because you're feeding them this volume of stuff that they then have to work. That's, 90, whatever percent is not going to turn into revenue. You're just feeding the volume metrics on that. So
either way, good. I'll stop there. I'm done.
Well, I want to throw out here that I'm in complete agreement with Jay around this, and Jay and I have had a number of discussions around gated, ungated. Gating is very interesting because you have some high value content that you think, well, we just licensed this from Forrester or Gartner and we spent $40K on it. If we're going to let people read this, this piece of information, then we want to know who they are. That's the price of entry, right? If it is, and I'm kind of, half on, half off in agreement with this. If it is fresh information, because it helps you, I determine who the accounts are that are asking to read this content, right? It helps you identify what companies people from what companies are looking at this content. Then that actually lets you then take that data, validate it against perhaps your ideal customer profile, and see, does that account fall within the cohorts, right? Yeah. The other thing is, though, if it's material related to your product, I think it absolutely has to be ungated. Doesn't matter how fresh it is. You want people to consume everything and anything about your product without any friction at all. Right? What is the point? Jay, you had a really good point about that LinkedIn targeting, where you said, okay, why gate a piece of content on LinkedIn if you've already identified the audience, your accounts, and your job titles? You're already putting that ad in front of the people you want it to be in front of. Why gate it? You actually want them to read the content, so why would you put a gate in front of it, preventing 90% of those people from actually filling out the form to read the content?
Yeah, no, that's right. And I think that maybe even goes into the slide here, which is, aligning to the nurture strategy and deploying that to the right leads, which is number one, a lot of nurture is going to start it's not going to happen through email as much anymore. It is exactly what Jeff said, which is your content has to be ungated. You have to figure out where your market's going to consume that content, and then deliver it to them and actually let them consume it. That's the hardest part for all this, is we don't let people consume the content now unless there's a gate in front of it. So that, honestly, and some of this is ops, some of this is demand gen, but what I have found why people are so resistant to ungating is that the first thing they say to me is, well, how am I going to know my content's working? I can't attribute it now. That's one of the first things I typically hear. And my thought process is, you're delivering your content to your target market. Look at consumption metrics instead. Don't look at a gated metric. Look at your time on page in Google Analytics to determine, okay, are people consuming the content? We know we're hitting our target ICP. And I even do what you do, Jeff, right? So I run LinkedIn, I run Facebook ads. We do, especially on Facebook, as Facebook isn't straightforward title targeting, we'll do a mini Facebook lead capture ad just to make sure we're hitting the right people. It's not to gate a bunch of content, but it's just to confirm, okay, we're hitting the right people, right? So that's number one. When you think about nurture, is it's becoming less email focused, and it's going to be more of pushing content into the channels your audience actually cares about. And I think number two, then, when we think about, okay, if we are getting emails, how are we getting them? Is I've actually simplified this. So I used to be very much with my nurture strategy, different channels, different white papers, different audiences require different nurture streams. So you'd have 10, 15, 20 nurture streams sometimes, right? And I've simplified this to the point where, for the most part, your company has a very similar message with very similar pain points. And I actually like to do a simplified nurture stream and just nurture your prospects, because I view nurture now in email marketing as an awareness channel. And that's the difference why I don't need a bunch of nurture streams. It's very simple, similar to social, is keep your brand in front of them. I value email opens over everything else. I don't even do a lot of links anymore or anything. We have overcomplicated it. The need to attribute and view link clicks, which are hurting open rates, where email to me in the nurture is a brand awareness play where people consume the content, very similar to a blog post or social. We want them to consume the email. If they consume it, that's a win. Because then eventually they're going to go to your website. And just like we said, let your website actually do its job to create sales intent and bring in inbounds into your website. That's how I see nurture.
I can't wait to hear Jeff's thoughts on this, but I've got to say, like so many people, right, build these very elaborate nurture engagement streams, right? And, the kind of mid funnel of that is an email that's got a link in it to go fill out a form to go watch, some sort of content or download some sort of content. So you've got you've got your brand awareness, which you were talking about, Jay. Then you've got the click in there, and then they're still supposed to go take this kind of next step, right, to go fill out a form. So your drop off is pretty substantial at that point. But at the same time, you've got to be feeding some sort of content in the nurture stream. So Jeff, what's your thoughts on this, man? Like I've built out some complex nurture strategies and engagement programs in my day.
So I have an advertising background before. I started in advertising. If anybody remembers newspapers, I was involved in newspaper advertising, and that of course led into getting into online advertising and into the current field I'm in. But that awareness play is really important, being top of mind. So as an example, if you were going through the community newspaper years ago, you would see a Toyota ad every Wednesday and Saturday on the local community newspaper. And then when it came time for you to buy a car, Toyota would always be top of mind because you always saw the Toyota ad. It's essentially getting imprinted on your brain, right? So in a way, it's it's kind of similar, right? You just want to be top of mind, so you do want to be nurturing out to people and communicating with people who have shown interest in your company, who have consented to receiving marketing communications from you. One of the things I heard, though, and I do want to make it clear, is if someone's already a known user and they're in your nurture, you should not be sending them to gated content. You already know who they are. Right? As long as you have those minimum data points of first name, last name, company, and email address to create a Salesforce object, lead object, you don't need to gate them any further, right? Just send them email that's ungated, that's high value. Don't overwhelm them with 40 different pieces of content within and CTAs within the email. Something relevant to the product, either perhaps the industry they're in. I do like to look at stages, funnel stages of top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of the funnel. Tofu, mofu, bofu. I also call it early, mid, late. Ultimately it's based around scoring. 0 to 25, 25 to 50, and 50 and up, kind of thing, right? And your goal is to get people over to the bottom of the funnel. Actually, if you're looking at the screen, it's going to go this way. If you're thinking about engagement streams in Marketo, right? So you got top of funnel, middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel, right? And then of course you want to keep a stream for those reject or recycled leads, right? Because when you move these leads into Salesforce and sales people start to work them, eventually they're going to say, nope, not a good fit, not ready. So you mark them as recycled, you move them into recycled, and this sort of just becomes this sort of always on kind of nurture strategy where you're just fulfilling, keeping them aware of your company or sending them top articles of interest, right?
I think that's the difference is, so when you talk about that and talk about the funnel, right, that's a whole nother conversation, but it's about scoring leads up. And this is where I struggle, which is we're valuing that versus being buyer centric and just giving them great content that they want to consume. And I think that's why it's so confusing. Give them great content they want to consume. And then eventually they're going to go to your website, let your website do its job, and they're going to inbound in. I think that's the way buyer behavior is changing, and I could be wrong, but I personally have never bought anything through email marketing. I don't think. I mean, maybe like on a B2C small stuff because it's like a 25% off sale, but I have bought 0 B2B products through email marketing that I can think of. And that's why I started.
I bought Marketo because they sent me an email and said, "Hey, you should check us out."
Well,
that's a pretty good buy right there.
And to be fair, and I think what I'm saying is, look, this used to work. I'm fully aware of that, and it still works now. I'm not saying it doesn't, but it's not 2007 anymore. It's 2020, and buyer behavior is changing so rapidly right now. And I feel like demand gen and even the market ops, like we're not keeping up with the new buyer-centric approach to marketing. I mean, my inbox is overloaded with nurture streams. Like, keep it simple, and your goal should be consumption. I just want them opening my emails, reading it, and consuming the content. That's just how I view it.
Yeah, and there are operational tactics that can be applied. One of them is as long as you have. This isn't going to work for everybody, so you will have gaps in the information, right? But at least when you look at your reporting, you can identify trends, because you're never going to, like, even Google Analytics is only sample data anyway, unless you buy Google Analytics 360 at 150K, then you'll get actual data. But you just want to identify the trends. That's all. Is there more people engaging? Are they spending more time on the page? Are they opening? Are there more clicks and visits to the URL, right? Because that's actually a success metric, not clicking the CTA. It's clicking the CTA and visiting this web page, which is where the asset is, and that would be I determine as a success. I totally lost my train of thought where I was going.
Well, I'll touch on this. I know we have one more slide that I think we want to get to.
So,
yet.
Like, I do remember my tactic was, you can, provided you're based on have tracking enabled correctly, you can actually monitor a lead or a prospect's behavior online and look for either scoring changes or status changes or web page visits, and so you can then either fast track them or slow track them based on their engagement. So as an example of one thing that we're doing on our end is we're looking to see if someone's visited the page in the last 4 days or had a program status change upwards, right? If that's the case, then they'll get an email. If they of course engage with that email, they'll get another email, and that's in essence fast tracking based on their behavior. But if they stop engaging, what happens? Well, then there's no behavior for you to react to. At that point, then you're also checking to see for inactivity, and then you would send them a reminder. So that reminder email could then re-engage them into fast tracking again. So you're actually playing with their behavior and responding to that behavior.
How likely they are to continue to engage. It's like the snowball thing. The more they consume, the faster they go down the stream for more and more.
Yeah.
So that kind of leads us into our kind of last broad topic here, which is, where are there opportunities to partnership with questions when attribution arises, right? So like demand generation team brings you in all these leads and they say they came in from, this great campaign that we ran. Here's where it came in from. That data needs to play into how you handle those leads on the marketing ops side. And then also feedback on, how are these leads performing? Are they consuming that content and going faster and faster through our nurture streams? Or did you just run a great campaign that dumped a bunch of volume out here based on the attribution? So the way that I've always looked at attribution is a way to kind of hold lead sources to the fire. When you say, well, we got X number of leads, this was a really great, PPC campaign because it drove us a lot of volume, but then that was kind of the metric, and that's where it stops, right? They never follow that down to see what kind of revenue those generated. So maybe you got 1,000 leads and none of them converted, or maybe you got 10 leads and all of them turned into deals, right? So in my world, attribution is about that feedback to demand generation teams and saying, hey, you dumped a bunch of volume on us, but none of those guys actually turned into any dollars. So what you did was just spend a bunch of money with AdWords and we didn't get any return on it. So I'm interested to hear you guys' thoughts on attribution. Jay, I know you're opinionated on attribution.
I'll start again, Jeff. Sorry.
Sure. I have a different. I tend to agree, but then disagree with Jay, specifically around attribution.
Yeah. So there's a few things that I think Rusty mentioned, which is there's good attribution and then there's bad points of attribution. Maybe that's a better way to look at it. And what's the good? Performance channels are great. So when we're running paid search, specifically bottom of the funnel, yes, like that can get reported back to determine how much revenue we're driving, not a cost per lead metric. Where a lot of people struggle, like with paid search, is they don't know how to scale it properly. Budgets get out of control, and you run into what Rusty said is they're getting hundreds of leads from paid search, and it's not turning into revenue. Typically, it's because they did it for a few months, they got 20, half turned to revenue, so they triple their budget, and then it all goes to hell, right? So on that side, I agree with attribution. I also agree with it on events. I agree with it on direct performance marketing channels where it's directly attributable to those channels. I think where some of the struggles are, where marketing ops could help, would be one, educating some demand gen folks, because a lot of them do, and this is even agencies, right? When you hire an agency, what do they report back to you? Cost per lead, cost per click, how those are going down, but they don't report back to you revenue ever. So I think this is where marketing ops, this is marketing as a whole, it's not ops, right? Marketing as a whole needs to be held accountable to the end result, which is revenue. And in most marketing teams, we're not going that far. And the other issue you run into is people own their channel. So if I come into your company and I run paid search, well, I don't want to look at revenue. I want to look at cost per lead because it makes me look good. Because if you guys don't do paid search, I don't have a job anymore. I mean, look at events. Like if you look at events in most marketing companies, most companies, events is the largest line item with the least amount of ROI. Like across the board, I see it time and time again. Like marketing ops has to help tell that story to revenue, not to lead metrics. And then I think where I struggle with attribution is when you over rely on attribution and it points you in the wrong direction. And what I mean is not everything in demand gen needs to be attributable. So if you look at attribution as the end all be all, you're not going to do a podcast, because a podcast, what happens is someone's going to view your podcast. They're going to message their boss, and that person's going to go to Google. They're going to do a search for your brand name, and you're going to give Google credit for that podcast. You're not going to do that top of funnel awareness content distribution strategies if everything needs to show up on an attribution report. And when you think about even tech stack and where it's at today, everybody's overstating their case. Drift will attribute their chat platform to everybody who touches their bot, regardless of what happens, regardless of what they do. You have ABM platforms that attribute revenue to view through conversions. Like we need marketing ops to help make sense of that, to have a single source of truth for attribution and not use these other channels that are these other tools that are trying to attribute to revenue that they shouldn't be attributing to.
Fair point. But you got like, and to your point, Jay, like tying it back to the revenue, right, is why you have an attribution model to begin with. So you can prescribe period costs to all of your campaigns. Jeff, I'm sure that, working in the MOPS world, I always enforce period costs in all of my Marketo instances anytime anybody created a program, so that I've got an idea of, we can balance revenue generated versus what that campaign actually costs. Now, whether or not that's accurate, what you get back from the field marketing team and they say, oh, this event cost X amount of dollars, is debatable, but that was one of
the. And I'm actually, to be clear on events, I'm not saying events are bad. I think what's bad is spending $100K on a temporary booth structure. I think we actually should do events. I think we just need to find better ways to do it that doesn't involve setting up a temporary structure and spending all that money to scan badges, right? Like just go to Zoom Info then and download leads. It's the same thing.
Wow.
I love it. We're just, Jeff, wow.
So many pros and cons. I mean, you just opened up so many cans of worms there, specifically with the Zoom Info Discover.org stuff.
We've also got a question on that too, so we'll get to talk about Zoom Info here.
All right. So the attribution that you're talking about, Jay, doesn't really align with the sort of the I've used multi-touch attribution, right? If you look at Marketo straight out of the box, or any marketing automation platform, whether it's Mautic, Pardot, MailChimp, whatever, that lead source, somebody comes in through AdWords, right? And there's 35K in a closed deal attributed to that. Well, you can say, wow, that $6 spend or $40 spend, earned us $36,000. But what you're not seeing in first touch attribution is you're not seeing that they attended a webinar. You're not like that. Actually, what you're not seeing is first there's essentially that first touch of the ad, clicking on the ad, but the lead conversion doesn't actually happen until they get to the landing page, right? So now, so here there's an ad for an event or a piece of something to read or something to watch, right? Is really what it comes down to. That's what you're offering up. Maybe they go to this, assuming it's gated, they go to this page, they fill out a form, that's the lead conversion. And then once they're in there, they're in some type of either trial nurture or funnel nurture, right? To a point where then they'll eventually be pushed over to a BDR or an AA who's going to qualify. They'll become, they go from MQL to sales accepted lead, and then they become an SQL because an opportunity gets created. And that's the opportunity creation. And all these touch points here, from the ad to the content at the lead conversion to the few email points, these all have attribution values, right? And combined together, they led to that $35,000 deal.
Yeah, so I'll say two things on that. And I know we're getting close to the top of the hour too, which is, as I think about this, sure, you can do attribution, just keep it in marketing, because what's happening when it's getting reported up to the board and others, this is what happens when you look at your attribution report. It's direct, organic, paid search, right? Like that's a majority of what you're gonna see, even with multi-touch and all. Like, all I'm saying is if you over focus on it, you won't do the things that actually build brand awareness. You're not going to run content distribution, like I said, and just let people consume your content. It has to be gated because you need that attribution point, right? You aren't going to start a podcast. You're not going to do a video series. You're not going to do those things because they don't show up on an attribution report. So we just need to be careful when we look at attribution to not overcorrect, because all of those things you should be doing that I mentioned basically are going to influence direct and organic. And then when a board member reads that, he's going to say, well, why are we doing this podcast? That's not generating any revenue. Well, that's probably not the case if you're doing it right. It just doesn't show up on an attribution report most of the time.
Which is the struggle on capturing the effectiveness of brand awareness, right? Like, how do you even measure that to begin with? That's been, I think, an ongoing struggle since marketing began. That's back to the Toyota ads, right, Jeff? Like,
yeah.
Well, even look at it. Here's one other way to look at attribution and why I've started to ignore it more and more. If you need a chat platform, where are you going right now? Drift. You're not going to Intercom. Why? Because you see them everywhere. If you need a sales enablement platform, where are you going to Outreach? You're going to choose Gong over Chorus. Why? Because you see them everywhere. They're crushing it. They're on LinkedIn. Like, they're everywhere. You probably are not going to show up an attribution report for them, but when there's a need, that's where you're going.
Fair point.
Well, the thing is they can probably, a good analytics person could probably take a look or identify trends in there of spends and revenue, right? So what is the velocity from an ad spend here, a promotional spend, or maybe it's always on, right? So they have a certain level of always on spend for advertising. But if they start to do bumps in the spend and then notice that 8 weeks down the road or 6 weeks down the road, depending on how long their cycle is, they may see a bump, right? An equivalent bump inside revenue. And that becomes an indicator for them, right?
Yep, 100%.
And just as well as if they see a dip in their spend, they may start to see a dip in revenue as well. So a good analytics person will be able to recognize that pattern and start to report on that, and that will actually show the value. Similar to the podcast is when a podcast comes out, a podcast gets announced, is there an increase in web traffic that can be attributed, or correlated or matched that, hey, here's a pattern, an ongoing pattern that, there's more visits to the website. Demand Gen makes a really good podcast with David Lewis.
Yep.
And so if people on the call, if they don't listen to that, they should really, go check that out on Spotify or wherever. But basically, he's got a podcast that comes on a regular basis. I would imagine there's a spike on their website in certain articles on a regular basis that's consistent, right?
No, good point. It's kind of the indirect. That's the marketing intelligence piece of being able to align stuff that's not directly available in the tool, right? We're not talking form fills. We're talking looking outside of the tools that we have in order to find some of that data to see where those spikes are when a podcast gets released and how it drives traffic. So, well, we can keep doing this all day long. Believe me, Jay and Jeff and I would be more than happy to, but we only have a few minutes left. So we will go ahead and open it up for questions now while we've got all of us on here. The first one actually that I want to address is actually from Arie. He chatted in. And Jay, you actually have experience of this and you've had good results. I've had poor results and highly discourage it. But so Arie's asking about, Zoom info list where you target a specific audience. And he's asking specifically about, these are people, this is a first touch from email. Maybe the first time that you're emailing them and contacting them. His question is, what kind of performance rates have you seen? Is it good? Is it bad? Should I do it or not? My take as a Marketo engineer is I hate downloaded lists and I hate when people do data imports, but I know Jay has a different take on it.
Go ahead, Jeff. Go ahead.
Well, I can speak to both the positives and negatives of it, right? So the first negative of it is that it's actually against your Adobe contract to use purchased imported lists, in Marketo, right? Marketo is a permission-based marketing system. Most marketing automation platforms are. If you wanted to go out and do a bunch of spamming because you pull down 100,000 leads or 30,000 leads or 50,000 leads from your Zoom info, from your Discover org contract list, you can't do it from Zoom info the way it's set up, the platform. But and you put that in bulk. Now, what you're going to find is that you're going to get 97% deliverability rate in the first few days of that list export. Great deliverability rate. You'll see very weak conversion, right? Fraction of a percent conversion on your landing page. But as a number of weeks go by, if you continue to use that list, all of a sudden you're going to see the deliverability starting to drop very rapidly down to 70%. Within a month, 2 months kind of thing. So if you're going to be doing that practice, don't do it within your marketing automation platform. Go out and use some third-party service that could do bulk mailing for you, right? You are restricted to bulk mailing to essentially the United States. So you want to exclude Canada, you want to exclude the EU. So it's essentially the United States and rest of the world.
Yeah. To piggyback on a little, so I do have a different take, but first to piggyback on that is, I've been at companies that have been blacklisted before for doing this. I know Rusty has.
Helped walk out of it. Yep.
Yeah. So that's number one. So number two is though, if you want to do this, how would you do it? So I'm actually, regardless of all of what I've said, I'm actually super bullish still on email as a channel, even in cold outreach when, and this is where most people struggle, it's leveraged as the brand awareness channel, right? So what do we do when we get a cold list? Our first thought is, great, now let's put links in there and stuff so that we can track them in our marketing automation platform. Like that's the next thing. No, your goal is to get email opens and keep them consuming your content. So look at it very similar to how you scroll through a LinkedIn feed when you're consuming content there. Brand awareness, great content, super insightful, give them all the information they need in the email right there. That's number one, is you have to do the emails the right way. And number two, if you're going to do this, clean that list. Send it through something like datavalidation.com, get rid of as much as you can, and try to make it as clean as possible. So the short answer is no, you shouldn't do it. If you're going to be really smart about it, as smart as possible, and realize, don't use it as a sales intent channel. It is not. If you want to do sales emails, then have sales do that. That's a whole other issue. They're doing that in Sales Loft and Outreach and all that stuff now, and we know it's happening. But if you're going to do it through marketing, do it like a marketing channel and build awareness.
All right. Well, Arie said he's got a hop, but he said thanks for all the feedback on that. Good stuff. So hope we answered that question sufficiently. We are running out of time because, again, Jay and Jeff and I can talk about this stuff all day long. So if you have any additional questions, if you've got a quick one right now, pop your hand up. We can unmute you. But outside of that, if anything occurs to you after the fact, we will be sending out a follow-up for this for all of our attendees and registrants. We'll have ways to get a hold of Jeff and Jay and myself, so you can follow up with any additional questions that you may have. Thanks for participating, gentlemen. We will be doing another roundtable coming up shortly. I do have to announce that, so in July, we're going to be doing another webinar with one of our Marketo champions, Amanda Thomas. It's going to be about optimizing your webinar channel and maximizing revenue from your webinar leads. So information coming up on that with the follow-up email for this. We're going to make this available as a podcast and also a recording. So hope to see you guys on the next one. Thanks so much.